On with the rest of the news this noon, Malacanang defending the chief executive's proposed confidential and intelligence funds for next year, as well as a proposed zero funding for a controversial social aid program. Vivian Gula reports.
More than 4 months before the year ends, only around half of the 27 billion peso allocation for the Ayuda para sa Kapos ang Kita program this year have been utilized. That is why the executive did not request Congress to fund the program next year, according to Malacanang.
So may natitira pa pong 13B na pwedeng nilang gamitin until the end of 2026. So ang DBM din po ay naka-receive ng almost 10 trillion budget proposals for the agencies. So kinakailangan lamang pong i-prioritize.
The chairperson of the House Committee on Appropriations says members of the lower chamber will have to discuss its collective position on whether or not it will push for AKAP funding for 2026.
This would have to be a collective decision on the part of the House whether or not to add funding for AKAP for this budget cycle. Personally, we've seen the value of AKAP.
AKAP is a financial aid program under the DSWD that seeks to help below minimum wage earners. Critics have claimed that it is a form of pork barrel, but House leaders and the DSWD deny this. For a congressman from the Makabayan bloc, instead of AKAP, the government should fund programs that will help generate jobs or hike wages.
Kung hindi ayuda, kung hindi trabaho, di ba? Dahil yun ang pangmatagalan. Kailangan nakabubuhay ang sahod. Pag nakabubuhay ito, ay hindi na kailangan ng ayuda.
Tinio also criticized the proposed confidential and intelligence funds for the office of the president next year, totaling more than 4.5 billion pesos. But the palace defended the proposal.
The president is the commander-in-chief and the chief architect of national policy or national security and foreign policy. Ang confidential funds o ang pera ay hindi naman masama kung ginagamit sa tama. Ang confidential funds or pondo ay nagiging masama kung ginagamit ng isang korap.
Malacanang also explained the need for its proposed over 1 billion peso allocation for the president's local and foreign trips next year.
Nakikita din po nyo ang kadalasang pagbiyahe ng Pangulo dahil hinihikayat niya ang ibang mga bansa na mag-invest para sa atin dito sa bansa natin.
The House Committee on Appropriations held an organizational meeting on Thursday ahead of its budget briefings, which are scheduled to kick off on Monday. The panel green-lighted the creation of a subcommittee that will review congressmen's proposed amendments to the 2026 national budget. This as the lower chamber abolished the practice of forming a small committee which used to review and resolve the proposed individual amendments of congressmen following criticisms that it lacked transparency.
Tapos meron kasi kaming tinatawag na execom. So doon po yan, i-consider natin lahat ng mga recommendations ng Budget Amendments Review Committee at the committee level.
Another reform to be implemented by the House for transparency is allotting 1 day for the so-called People's Budget Review, where civil society organizations can give their inputs and proposals on the proposed national budget. Vivian Gula, ABS-CBN News.
With its multi-billion peso subsidy restored, PhilHealth will soon give Filipinos access to 75 types of medicines for free at select clinics and pharmacies. Rafael Bosano gives us the details.
After a year without government funding, state-run health insurer PhilHealth is expected to have its subsidy restored in 2026. This comes as PhilHealth announced the expansion of its benefit packages for Filipinos, including its new primary care program, Yaman sa Kalusugan. The YAKA program, which focuses on disease prevention, will provide registered members with free laboratory tests and diagnostics at accredited centers. The Department of Budget and Management has proposed a 53.3 billion peso budget for PhilHealth in 2026.
Healthcare remains a top priority. That's why the budget for the health sector will increase by 23.6% to expand and enhance delivery of healthcare services nationwide. This includes subsidies for PhilHealth to cover the insurance premiums of indirect contributors, as well as funding for medical assistance to indigent and financially incapacitated patients.
On Thursday, PhilHealth also launched its guaranteed and accessible medication for outpatient treatment or gamot. This is a comprehensive outpatient drug benefit package which covers up to 20,000 pesos worth of essential medicines per beneficiary. PhilHealth President and CEO Dr. Edwin Mercado explains why gamot will be an important program for Filipinos.
Doon po sa ating datos, ang isa po sa pinakamalaking out-of-pocket spending ng ating mga kababayan ay doon sa tinatawag na medical goods o yung mga gamot at mga gamit na ginagastusan natin sa labas ng hospital. Kaya nakikita natin na ito yung unang kailangan nating tugunan.
A total of 75 medicines are included under gamot, including treatments for a wide range of conditions like asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart conditions, and nervous system disorders. To access the medicines, a member must first be registered with a Yakap clinic, undergo medical assessment by a primary care doctor, and be issued prescription. These will then be shown to any gamot facility together with a government ID. Currently, gamot facilities are available at various drugstores and hospitals in Metro Manila. PhilHealth is looking for more partners to increase access to free and cheap life-saving medicines for Filipinos. Rafael Bosano, ABS-CBN News.
President Marcos should at least slash his confidential and intelligence funds to give more weight to his administration's criticism of the alleged fund misuse by Vice President Sara Duterte. That's according to UP School of Economics Assistant Professor J.C. Punongbayan. The bulk of the proposed 10.77 billion pesos in CIF allocations for next year will go to the Office of the President, while none are allotted for the OVP. Punongbayan says these funds are better placed in actual law enforcement agencies instead of the President's office. Now, he adds it's time to investigate how these secret funds were spent, not just under the Marcos administration, but also under the term of detained former President Rodrigo Duterte.
It was actually the Duterte administration that kind of started this trend of ballooning confidential and intelligence funds. And the Marcos administration kind of continued that practice. It's high time that there should be an investigation of how these colossal funds have been spent, not just under the under the Marcos administration. Congress should be fiscalizing the expenditures of various agencies in the executive, including the Office of the President itself. But the political reality is that, of course, the Speaker of the House is the first cousin of President Marcos. And then, of course, the legislature itself enjoys such a huge fund. It will be quite difficult to expect Congress to actually demand that the Office of the President becomes more prudent in the way it spends its money when itself the Congress is not doing the same thing.